Hare Krishna, and welcome to another evening in the lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas. My name is Chaturatma. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was visibly on the planet, he had instructed, as we've spoken in the past weeks, particularly Sanatan and Rupa Goswamis, to go to Vrindavan and write Vaishnava literatures. At that time, residing in Vrindavan, of course, were many other devotees, not the least of which was Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was requested, due to his association with the pastimes of Mahaprabhu and due to his access to certain diaries of the devotees and personal associates of Mahaprabhu, he was requested by the Vaishnavas to write the world-famous literature Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This Chaitanya Charitamrita is the premier source for Gaudiya Lila, about Mahaprabhu's life. There were other books written at that time, most notably Chaitanya Mangala and Chaitanya Bhagavat. These are what you might call, for the sake of an academic conversation, the first generation of Chaitanya literatures. The second generation of Chaitanya literatures would include books such as the Bhakti Ratnakar, the Narottam Vilas, and a book called the Prem Vilas. Prem Vilas describes the activities of predominantly the second generation devotees of Mahaprabhu, but it describes many of their activities in relationship with and some activities preceding this second generation of while Mahaprabhu was visibly on the planet. One such story that it tells is the life of is the life of who we're going to speak about this evening, and that is Srivasa Pandit, also known as Srivasa Thakura, the fifth member of the Panchatattva. Prem Vilas tells how his lineage was very well respected. There's a wonderful village called Sri Hatta Gram. Get used to a certain flow of words and you automatically say it the way you're accustomed to it, whether it's correct or not. Sri Namhatta we always think of, but this place was called Sri Hatta Gram. And in this place lived one very pious Brahmana. His name was Jaladhara Pandit. And Jaladhara Pandit had 5 sons. These 5 sons were quite well known. Nalini was the eldest. And then there was Srivas, and Sriram, Sripati, and Srinidhi. Now, of these 5 sons, 4 of the brothers were very prominent in the Chaitanya Lila literatures. And that's, of course, Sripati, Sriram, Srinidhi, and Srivas. The natural leader of these 4, their most prominent, and most focused and spiritually advanced was, of course, Srivasa Thakura. It's mentioned in the Gaur Gonadesha Dipika that Srivasa Thakura was none other than the incarnation of Narada Muni. And we'll mention a couple of other points in this regards a little bit later, what this represents in regards to 9 points of Srivasa Thakura, 9 points of philosophy of the incarnation of Srivasa Thakura. His brother Sriram Pandit was understood to be Narada Muni's close and personal friend Parvat Muni. Many of the pastimes of Narada Muni, you'll hear of the description of his good friend Parvat. Most significant amongst those would be when Narada Muni delivered the hunter, Magrari. Of course, you remember Magrari was very famous for half-killing. He didn't just go and hunt. Some of you out there listening or viewing may not be able to relate to this, but here in Alachua where I live, I sit on 11 acres of land, and the neighbor next to me has 10 acres of land, and behind us is 500 acres of land. It's all wooded. And of course there's many wild animals there. Deer, there's actually wild boar, and it's a very common sound in the early morning hours to hear shotguns, because the hunters are out there killing the innocent animals. And sometimes I like to put a sign up in our yard, all innocent animals welcome here, we don't shoot you. Actually, we do have one family of turkeys, a mother turkey and 3 little babies that come regularly to eat just near our back porch. But at any rate, back to my story. So when Narada Muni was delivering Mrgai the hunter, and then went back to visit him once he had become his disciple, he took with him, as the story tells, his dear friend Parvat Muni. So Parvat Muni was also his brother in this story, Sri Ram. So these 4 brothers, after some time, they moved to Kumar Hut. Kumar Hut was their temporary residence, and then from there they moved to Navadvip. Now, Navadvip is very close to Shantipur. We've spoken about this before. And in Shantipur at the time was living one very famous devotee, Advaita Acharya. And one of his closest friends was Srivasa. Now this means that there was quite a bit of seniority to the age of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We've spoken before about our personal desire and personal effort to try and get a chronological presentation, if you will, or understanding of the ages of the different associates of Mahaprabhu, who was older by how much, who was this age like that, and how, quite frankly, difficult it is due to the lack of information clearly denoting these things. But we do understand very clearly that Srivasa was an associate of Advaita Acharya, and even more importantly, he was a very dear friend of Jagannath Mishra, who was the father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, prior to this tight relationship with Jagannath Mishra, when he was associating in Shantipur with Advaita Acharya, equally as much as Advaita Acharya was distressed by the fallen condition of the living entities in the Kali Yuga lifestyle, Advaita Acharya was also feeling that, Srivasa was also feeling that same pain. Now, if we analyze this, it does go properly with the mood that we find in the personality of Narada Muni himself. And Narada Muni, of course, Narada Muni throughout all of Krishna Lila is always concerned about delivering the conditioned souls and really pumping things up so that there's an opportunity for making ripe the circumstance of Krishna being born. This is his great desire. So, in this way, we see that the same mood was present in Srivasa Thakura. Srivasa Thakura was very much concerned about the suffering condition of the living entities. And like Advaita Acharya, he wanted to know, how can these living entities be delivered? Now, of course, Advaita Acharya understood that the way to deliver them is to call out for the Lord to come. And this was one of the moods of Advaita Acharya, to intentionally and with great fervent prayer call out for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please, my dear Lord, you must appear, because except for your personal appearance, no one can deliver these souls in Kali Yuga. Now, of course, Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu himself. He's certainly quite capable. Srivasa Thakura is Narada Muni. He's certainly quite capable. But all of these great devotees are subservient to the desire of the Lord himself, who had intended to come for many different purposes. We won't go into all of that here, because then we'd spend one whole class just discussing why did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come. Let's leave it for this presentation that they were there to support his coming by requesting him to deliver the fallen souls. So in this way, there was this great concern. Now, during the course of this, Jagannath Mishra and Srivasa Pandit created quite a friendship. Actually, so close was their friendship, it mentions in the Chaitanya Lila literatures that Jagannath Mishra's shadow was Srivasa. That he was just like a shadow to Jagannath Mishra. And his wife, Srivasa Pandit, Srivasa Thakura's wife, Malini, she was the most dear friend of Sachimata. It mentions how she was very, very attached to Sachimata, and how she would always be there to assist and guide and serve her, and that when Sachimata became pregnant with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu within her womb, that Srivasa spoke with Jagannath Mishra, and the two of them decided it would be most beneficial if Malini would come and stay and assist Sachimata like this. And of course, we know that in the in this time in Indian history, in the Gaudiya way of life there in Bengal, that when the lady was to bear a child, she would stay in the pregnancy home. Not like some home they'd send her off to, but there would be one room that would be designed for the delivery of the child. Because, of course, as much as modern-day personalities may not want to think of it, the delivery of a child is a very messy and unclean business. So many different bodily fluids and so many different... So this was all done in one section. Just like in these times that we're speaking, the toilet was not in the house. This is only a recent invention where the toilet is kept in the house. Even in in early American culture, the toilet was kept outside. Now it's seen as a great accomplishment. The toilet is right next to the bedroom, sitting right next to the kitchen. I remember in some of the New York apartments that I lived in when I lived in New York, the bathtub would be right in the kitchen. Now the toilet would be in a door just next to that, but the bathtub was right in the kitchen. Anyway, so in this way, there was a separate room for the birth, and Srimati Malini would come and she assisted Sachidevi in this way. So actually it mentions that she nursed Sachimata all through the delivery and the pregnancy, and was like her, Malini and Srivasa were like a second set of parents. Like a second set of parents to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was a young boy, Nimai. Interesting thing about this, because another aspect of this culture is that, generally speaking, the mother and father did not give chastisement. They didn't instruct so much like that. They kind of gave a little loose rein to the child. Not ridiculously so, but at any rate, the family unit was so big, there were so many uncles and aunts and this, that the uncle would take care of the chastising. Because then if the child held some resentment, it wouldn't be towards the parents. A very nice society. Of course, nowadays, we're lucky if we have two parents, what to speak of, uncles and aunts and grandmas and all living together like that. So, at any rate, this was the responsibility taken up by Srivasa Thakura to kind of give, because he noticed this young boy Nimai is very mischievous. It's always causing some trouble. Always these comments are coming there. You remember very well from the Chaitanya Charitamrita the descriptions of how, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, how when young Nimai would go to the school, after school he would go to the water, and where the Brahmins would be saying their ablutions and, making their prayers and chanting their Gayatri, he would go and splash them all with water. Sometimes he would go underwater while they were saying their Gayatri and grab them by the ankles and pull out their feet, all these different things, disturbing them like anything. And we know the stories how he would go to the young girls and tell them, oh, you're worshiping Lord Shiva to get good husband. You just worship me, I'll give you good husband. No, Nima, you go away, quit bothering. So you won't worship me? Then I curse you that not only will you get old, man, but he will be the co-wife of 10 wives. So he would play like this. So a little mischievous, Sometimes he would go in places and pinch the babies, making them cry and then run out of the room. And so in addition to this, at this point in his youth, he was very steadfastly pursuing academic studies, logic, Nyaya, these different mundane topics, so to speak, So in this way, Srivasa decided he would have a word with him. Of course, prior to this happening, Jagannath Mishra was complaining to Srivasa, oh, have you seen Nimai's behavior today? Have you heard what he did in school? The Brahmins just came to me and they're complaining like anything about what he's doing. What am I going to do with this boy? And Srivasa said, Jagannath Mishra, my dear friend, don't you worry, I'll handle everything. So he noted these things. So it mentions that one day, in a very fatherly way, Srivasa approached Nimai. And it's a very interesting description, because it mentions that generally speaking, Srivasa tried to avoid any one-on-one with Nimai, because as he became older and became more settled in school and more knowledgeable in different logic and argument and debate and things, that he would just endlessly debate with people. There's several other devotees who these pastimes are told. And it was just annoying, so the older people would just avoid him. So Srivasa generally avoided him, but this day he sought him out. And he saw that he was with 4 or 5 of his students. And he called him. He said, here, please. And he said to him, O crest jewel of the vain and arrogant students of mundane subjects, why do you spend all day and night studying and teaching. Tell me, why is it that people study in the first place? I will tell you why, he said. They study in order to know Krishna. Now this is similar to what we found Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu adopt or adapt, bring into either way, his teachings later after he met Ishvara Puris. He saw all the syllables of the alphabet to mean Krishna and like this. So, anyway, Srivas continued. He said, if by scholarship one does not gain devotion to Sri Krishna, how will such learning be of any help? We see this in our modern world. People may have PhDs and MAs and BAs and BSs and all these different things. But if they don't develop some understanding of what their purpose in life, what's the reason? What's the reasoning? So, in any way, he said, if you don't learn to develop appreciation and love for Sri Krishna by such learning, it is simply a tedious endeavor and a waste of time. Now, anyone that is currently taking a college education can attest to how tedious college studies are. Day after day and so long and all these different things, and very, very necessary to be successful in this process. Very, very necessary. So he said, if you're actually learned, Srivas continued, if you're actually learned, you will let your devotion to Sri Krishna manifest in your teachings. And don't waste time in these other ways. They will not benefit you. This and this alone will be the perfection of your knowledge. So in a very fatherly yet sternly uncle type of way, he chastised him in this way. He corrected him. So Lord Chaitanya smiled and he folded his hands. And he said, hear from me, Pandit. He said, by your mercy, all the things you say shall soon come to pass. And Srivas Pandit chuckled at this. He thought this was a very nice response. You know, you want, when you have to chastise someone, you want them to agree and say, yes, you're right. So he was very satisfied by this. So, anyway, in due course of time, we know the unfortunate event of the passing of Jagannath Mishra. His father came to take place. And then after the passing of his father, he convinced his mother that you should let me go to Gaya, and I'll perform the last rites for father there. And then while in Gaya, we saw that he actually met with his spiritual master, Ishvara Puri. And then meeting with Ishvara Puri, he was given that seed of Prema Bhakti. He was given that seed of devotional service. So after he returned home, he made the home of Srivasa Thakura his headquarters for spreading Krishna consciousness, spreading love of God. And of course this made Srivasa very, very happy. Now first of all, Srivasa's home was just suitable for this. Very, very palatial home. Wonderful place with very, very beautiful, largely ornamented rooms. And a very high wall that surrounded the property with lush banana trees and different types of vegetation growing and hiding everything. It was just perfect for the secrecy that Mahaprabhu wanted for his late night kirtans. So in this way he began to develop very much his Sankirtan movement from the home of Srivas. Excuse me. Sorry. So one night Mahaprabhu was observing the Sankirtan activities, and they had stopped for a minute, and he was sitting with Srivas. And he observed something, so he said to Srivas, they had this conversation. He said, Srivas, we're sitting here alone, just you and I in this solitary room, so now I'm going to ask you a question which you can please answer for me. You don't have to answer to anyone else, I won't mind, so you just tell me. He said, how is it I never see you go out anywhere? You don't do any business. How is it that you maintain yourself? Please tell me. So Srivasa Thakura, he said, I'm simply not inspired to do this. This is the only answer I can give you, my lord. So he said, but you have a big family. You have a large home. How do you manage all these things if you don't do any business? And Srivasa says, whatever one is destined to receive, that he will receive in one way or another. He does not need to make any endeavor or extra effort. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh, this is a very suitable philosophy for a sannyasi. So whatever comes will come by the grace of God. Why don't you simply give up family life and take sannyas? And Srivasa laughed. He said, no, no, my Lord. He said, I'm not capable of doing that. That is not my path. And then Lord Chaitanya said, you won't take sannyas. You won't take any charity from any other Brahmins. You won't go out to make an earning. How do you possibly plan to maintain your family? What if I come to your home? Then what will you do if I decide to live here? So Srivasa said, my dear Lord, I will simply clap my hands 3 times. I have firm faith that whatever is to take place, even after 3 days of fasting, it will take place. If nothing comes from that time, then I will simply drown myself in the Ganges. Lord Chaitanya said to him, he said, Srivasa, due to your faith, even if Lakshmi Devi herself has to beg door to door to support you, you will never be in any need of anything. No poverty or want will ever enter your home. So, in this way, this is a very intimate and sweet relationship between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his dear devotee Srivasa Thakura. So, the locals, after this kirtan had gone on, in Srivasangam, the house of Srivas, they were every night having such big kirtan, and such ecstasy was being developed. This was what we would call the foundational days of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, which we would describe as the worldwide Sankirtan movement, following Prabhupada's words. But this was the beginning, in the seed of Navadvip, in the seed of Mayapur, in the home of Srivas, where he was beginning to develop and really churn the ocean of the holy name. So the locals were complaining because, as you know from descriptions we've all heard, there were various kinds of loud kirtans and roaring sounds throughout the night, and all types of ecstasies being shown. So the locals, they came to Sachimata and they were complaining to her about her son. He said, you have to bind him up by his hands and feet. Otherwise, it must be clear his life affairs are disturbed, and this is the only thing that will prevent his sickness at night. And then other people would say, if you just keep him in the house and only feed him coconut water, then this insanity he is manifesting will all go away. And then others would say, no. He is haunted by a ghost. You must give him some particular type of ghee offered to Lord Shiva, and that will please take all the ghosts away. And then others would even say, no, that is not the right thing. If you just sit him down and apply Vishnu oil to his head, that will balance out his life affairs. So in this way, they were all interpreting different things, that all of Lord Chaitanya's ecstasies, that all of the emotions of his Sankirtan movement, these were all symptoms of his insanity. So Mother Sachi, she's a little concerned, she's a single mother. Her youngest son is married now, but still he's there, so she's quite concerned. Her father has passed away. Who will look after the boy? One son has already taken sannyas. So much anxiety is there. So she goes to Srivas and she complains, Srivas, all the locals are saying like this and like that and like this. What should I do? And Srivas just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. He said, Mother, this disease that they are describing that your son has is a very good disease. I also want that disease. He said, we should all be attacked by this illness that Nimai Pandit has. Krishna has bestowed his mercy upon your son, that this so-called disease is present with him. It is a sign of his deep devotion to Sri Krishna. Don't feel any worries or any distresses. This is as it should be. So in this way, he spoke very nicely to Mother Sachi, assured her like that. So, in this way, the amazing kirtans of Srivasangam continued on night after night, roaring and loud chanting and uproarious music and all of these. No one that was an outsider could understand. No one could understand. And many of them were trying to understand. Some of them were trying to sneak in. There's a couple of stories in this regards. Once that one old woman, some stories say it was the mother-in-law of Srivas, but anyway, one elderly lady tried to sneak in one night and was hiding under a basket. And so then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started up the kirtan, And all the associates at that time, it was closed kirtan. Only his closest, most confidential associates. Closest and confidential mean of his particular Leela. That they are the personalities he had come from Krishna Leela, that had come to assist him in this. So they were his most intimate associates. So the mood of devotion would have been very, very high. So in this way, they would start the kirtans, and very shortly the ecstasy would begin to flow. We've all experienced those kirtans. I'm sure all of you out there have had this opportunity for kirtans that were just beyond imagination. That the purity of the kirtan was so sweet. I recently had the good fortune of being in kirtans such as that, not like Srivasa Thakura, but being in such sweet and highly advanced kirtans when I was visiting with Indraduna Maharaj in Poland at the Woodstock Festival. B.B. Govinda Swami was leading some kirtans that were just amazing. So, in this way, they were having these experiences. And Lord Chaitanya stopped. He said, tonight I am not experiencing the ecstasy. There must be someone impure in the room. So they stopped and they looked this way and that. No, Mahaprabhu is simply our associates. All right, we will start again. And they started again and the kirtan began to go, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And he stopped. He said, no, there is someone impure. The ecstasy is not coming tonight. So they looked and looked, and finally they found in the corner, underneath one large basket, was Srivasa's mother-in-law or some elderly lady, whichever way it is. And Lord Chaitanya said, no, she must be taken out. So Srivasa removed her from the room, and then the kirtan started back up, and everything went very, very nicely. There was one other time, Lord Chaitanya, the kirtan was going, and Lord Chaitanya stopped again. He said, somehow or another, I am not feeling the ecstasy. There must be someone impure. And what had happened was Srivasa had brought someone in. He said, no, there is no one impure here. Lord Chaitanya said, there must be some outsider. Well, I have brought in one person, Srivasa said. But he is very pure brahmachari. He only lives on milk. For 2 years now, he has drank nothing but milk. His austerities are so great. And he is here because he wanted to hear the kirtan. And Lord Chaitanya roared, take him out! Does he think simply by drinking milk he can purchase the opportunity for this kirtan? He said, one cannot purchase love of God simply by austerity and penance. One must have bhakti. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya was very strict about this in the beginning like that. Now, of course, we know ultimately Lord Chaitanya introduced the entire mood of no hard and fast rules. Anyone take up the name. And this we'll cover a little bit later. But at this point, very close associates as he was developing this. Now, of course, the local people, they continued, being so upset and cursing and all unhappy, because what is happening is their greatest preoccupation is being stolen away from them by this kirtan. And what is that preoccupation? What does everyone do at night? Sleep. All they wanted to do was sleep. And all Lord Chaitanya wanted to do was keep the chanting going. And they were having their sleep stolen by the so-called noise of the kirtan. So they were what is this mania? What is possessing these mad people? So in this way they were going on like this. They've all given up the pursuit of knowledge. They've all given up the pursuit of higher principles for this chanting all night long. What is the benefit here? Bunch of impudent upstarts. What do they know about religious principles? Is there not piety in silently chanting the name of God? Let them sit and silently chant the name of God. Who are these four brothers of Jaladhar Pandit that they organize this big thing and so much noise is coming? And why are they associates so loud with their kirtan? Have they all gone mad? Maybe they're actually intoxicated from drinking behind those walls and simply leading people to believe they're chanting. We'll break into the house and throw the whole lot of them into the Ganga. Then we'll be finished with this business. So the locals are going on like this night after night. And Lord Chaitanya and his associates are going on night after night engaged in this wonderful kirtan. So soon they were concerned because, as we've spoken many times, Mohammedan rulers were in control of the property and the government and the land at that time, overseeing everything. And so they would say, if we don't keep quiet, then the Mohammedans will be disturbed and they'll be very upset and they will send their guards here. We must keep the Srivasa ask the Srivasa to keep it down a bit. He must control his kirtans, keep a little, Now, The most prominent amongst these individuals was one tantric, and his name was Gopala Chapala. Gopala Chapala was very, very proud fellow. Very, very proud of his learning, very proud of his knowledge, very proud of his devotion to Durga, but he was most proud of his beautiful nose and his very long and beautiful fingers. Now, in the understanding of the 32 bodily symptoms of a Mahapurush, of a great personality, 2 of those symptoms are long and elegant fingers, not these little short stumpy things you see here on my hand, but long and elegant fingers and a long and elegant nose. This is actually an interesting point because many places it describes the sesame flower-like nose of a great personality. So I don't know how many of you out there have seen sesame flowers. I had the opportunity, we did a jugga here at New Raman Reti, and the jugga pit was left for some time, and some sesame seeds grew, sesame plants. And the sesame plants matured. And the sesame plants gave flowers. Now, I always thought in my mind, what does a sesame flower look like? Some kind of daisy-looking thing? No, a sesame flower is actually a little bit like a trumpet. It's got a long extension. So if you hold it in a certain way, you can see, oh, that's a nose. So apparently, a somewhat long nose is considered a wonderful bodily appearance. So in this way, he was very proud of these 2 features. But he was very rough in his speech. Now, the point is made by many commentators that if one has great knowledge, and if one has bodily beauty, but is rough in their speech, what is the benefit to them? So, in this way, he decided, don't you all worry, I'm going to discredit the Srivasa Thakura. I will take care of everything. So, late at night, he arranged that what would happen is that the items for worshipping Durga would be put in front of the door of Srivasa. Now keep in mind that the Vaishnavas do not worship the demigods. Now some people may ask, well, how is it that we have Gopishwar Mahadev in Vrindavan? And even in Mayapur Dham there are several temples to Lord Shiva. The gopis themselves worship goddess Katyayani, a form of Durga. If one is worshipping solely and wholly for the purpose of achieving Krishna Bhakti, and if one is worshipping solely and wholly with the Mahaprasad of the Lord, then such request for assistance in advancement in devotional service is not prohibited by the Shastras. So, at any rate, we find that the actual worship of the demigods as done by the Tantrics, of which Gopal Chapal was not done by the Vaishnavas. So, Gopal Chapal decided to smear the name of Srivasa Thakura. So late at night he went and he put the symptoms there, a small bottle of wine and some big plantain leaf and some red kumkum and a red hibiscus flower. This is something I learned when I was in India. Many people in the West don't know, but hibiscus flower is pink and red, and the red ones are never offered to Krishna because they are meant for the worship of Lord Shiva. So he put all these things there. So when Srivasa got up in the morning and opened the door to his home and stepped out, he noted. He said, oh, look at this. So he could understand everything, but being a humble devotee, he called all the local Brahmins. He said, please, all come to my home here. He said, I want you to see that just look. Here is the proof now that silently I am in quiet worshipping Mother Durga. This is obviously the proof. It is all here. The Brahmins did not believe this for a moment. They started discussing who has offended Srivasa in this way. Who has put these things here? This is a horrible mistake. No, bring a sweeper. Clean this area. Take all this away. This is not to be brought before a Vaishnava's home. So no one believed it. No one believed it. Now an interesting thing happened. Gopala Chapala, who was so proud of his nose and his long fingers, developed one disease as a result of this offense. Because we know from all the different Shastras that the greatest offense one can make is the offense against a Vaishnava. And so what is that disease he developed? Leprosy. Now what happens when one gets leprosy? The skin develops open wounds and sores that pus And then eventually that pus develops maggots. And then they begin to eat away at the skin. It's a very, very horrible disease. Nowadays they hide all these things behind, doors and all. But at this time there was no such hiding. And he got this in two places. Which two places? His beautiful nose and his beautiful fingers. So it says that the nose literally was melting off of his face. And his hands were like this. And he was reduced to living on the footpath near the Ganga. Now, why was he reduced to living on the footpath near the Ganga? He was a very powerful tantric. He had a nice wife, beautiful home. But it mentions that when he got this leprosy condition, his wife threw him out. Because you can't touch a person like that, you'll get also. Everything becomes contaminated. So she threw him out of the house. So he was left with nothing but to live on the side of the footpath. So one day Mahaprabhu was going by. And he saw Gopal Chapal. And Gopal Chapal saw, this is the Lord who I've offended by all these things. So he begged, please you forgive me. And Lord Chaitanya said, no. He said, I cannot forgive you. You will suffer 1,000,000 births in hell because you have offended my devotee. The only way to become free is that you must go and ask the forgiveness of the devotee whom you've offended. Otherwise, I can do nothing. My hands are bound. So in this way, Gopal Chapal did go and seek out Srivasa Thakura and pleaded with him for forgiveness. And Gopal Chapal was easily forgiven for Srivasa. And then Lord Chaitanya delivered him, and all of his bodily diseases were removed. So this is how this kirtan was going on. This was one of the aspects. Now, another time during this kirtan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting very nicely, and in one of the other rooms in the house, one of the sons of the family passed away. Now, at this time, all the ladies began to cry and weep in separation, and Srivasa Thakura, he said to them, do you not know you should not be attached to this body? He said, this type of crying is not the proper thing. At least if you're going to cry, you wait and do it later. I don't want the kirtan of Mahaprabhu to be disturbed. So he said, you must stop this now and not disturb him. So he kept it all quiet. And then he went to the kirtan and continued on like this, and the kirtan went. So when the kirtan finished in the evening, Lord Chaitanya said to Srivasa, he said, tonight I felt that maybe there was something that was not right. Is there some calamity that has happened in the home? And Srivasa Thakura said, my dear Lord, he said, you are present here with the holy name and the glorification of Sri Krishna. What calamity could there possibly be? Mahaprabhu said, still, I think something must have happened. Well, as long as you've asked, one of the sons in our family has passed away. Lord Chaitanya said, no, and you did not tell me. Take me to this boy's side. No, my dear Lord, I don't want you. No, you take me to his side. Let me see this child. So Mahaprabhu was taken, and there was the boy laid out on the bed. So Mahaprabhu went over and touched the child, and he said, my dear son, why have you left the house of Srivasa Thakura? Why have you left your father in this way? The most amazing thing happened next. The dead child received life again and sat up and said, my dear Lord, which father are you describing? He said, I am simply a conditioned living entity wandering in the world this way and that way. Whether I stay in this body or leave this body is not under my control. So you're asking so many different things, but this is not my decision. This is the control of the material nature. So in this way the child began to speak and preach about the temporary nature of this body and the soul's presence within the body and the eternal nature of the soul. And then when he was finished, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu let the child leave. He passed away. And it mentions that Srivasa was felt so honored that the child had returned and spoken such nice words, and then had departed within the very presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Such a great benefit. So all of these wondrous things were happening there in the house of Srivasa Thakura. Now, as we mentioned, the locals were complaining like anything. And Gopal Chapal had tried all his madness, but still they were going to the Muslim leaders. And Srivasa was a bit concerned. He was thinking, maybe the Muslim leaders might come here and cause some trouble. This Qazi Husan Shah, he may come and give some difficulty to us. So, what should I do? So, Srivasa Thakur's family deity was in a Shringashila. And he was worshipping. And he was worshipping this deity, actually not in a Shringashila, a deity of Nisringa. So he was worshipping Nisringa. And he was praying to his deity, my dear Lord, please protect us from these Muslims. At that time, in the morning, when he was doing his puja, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and burst the door open and stepped in. He said, Srivas, do you not know who you are worshipping? I am that person you are worshipping. Do you not have faith in me? And then he went and he sat down on the throne of Srivas and manifested his 4 arms and his mane of the presence of Nisringa Bhagavan. And he said, if the Muslims come, I will personally destroy all of them. You have nothing to fear. Simply you continue on. I sit in the heart of these Muslim rulers as I sit in the heart of everyone. So you have nothing to fear. Simply take shelter of me. So in this way he agreed. And he, continued worshipping, in this way very, very nicely. You just go on worshipping me, Lord Chaitanya said. Do not worry about any of these other things. Very, very nice like this, So after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu convinced Srivas like this of his presence, of his being non-different, this is actually a theme we find throughout the Lord's pastimes, is that he is always showing how he is non-different from the deity form. So he said to Srivas, you bring each of your family members in here and let them touch my feet and ask from me their benediction of their heart's desire. So they all came and touched the Lord's feet and then got their Krishna Bhakti. Now, in due course of time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he departed from Nadia, from Navadvip, and he went and made his residence in Jagannath Puri. During that time, one thing I want to tell before I go there, yes, is how Lord Chaitanya tested Srivasa Thakur's faith in Lord Nityananda. So it mentions that one time Srivas and the Lord were sitting together and discussing Krishna Katha. And while discussing in that, Srivas heard the Lord exclaim. He said, my dear Srivas, let me ask, why are you letting this Avadut, Nityananda, stay in your home? See, Nityananda, as you may remember, had left home when he was barely 11 years old. His father, Hadai Pandit, and mother, Padmavati, had received one sannyasi. And when that sannyasi was leaving, he said, may I ask one boon from you? And Hadai Pandit said, you may ask anything, I will give it gladly. He said, please, I am in need of one servant. Send your boy to travel with me. And these words were like an arrow to the heart of Hadai Pandit. But it was his word, and he agreed, so he let Nityananda travel with this sannyasi. And in due course of time, Nityananda traveled and then separated and then ended up in Navadvip. A very long story, and we'll cover that another time. So he ended up in Navadvip. Now, when he was in Navadvip, he made the home of Srivas and Malini his residence. Now, as I mentioned, they were quite elderly. So they're very old, but he had a relationship with them as if he were their young child. So, anyway, he was staying there. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Srivas one day, he said, how is it you let the Avadut stay in your home? No one has any idea what his caste is, what his dynasty is, what his background. He appears to have no standard of social standing, no position of social standing like this. So he said, in my opinion, you're being extremely too liberal in your embracing of this Nityananda. He said, if you wish to maintain the good name of your family heritage and your good position in society as an elevated Brahmana, then I suggest that you should have the Avadut move out of your home and let him go elsewhere. So Srivas smiled very slightly. Remember, He is one of the eternal associates of the Lord. So he smiled very slightly, and he said, "My dear Prabhu, why are you testing me like this?" He said, "Whoever worships you even for one day, that person is as dear to me as my own life. And Nityananda, he is non-different from you. His entire life is made up of worshipping you, and he is the same part and parcel as you. He is your own body, and I have proof of this. If Nityananda keeps companionship with a drunken Mohammedan woman, it would spoil anyone else's reputation. But I do not think about him at all in this way. I will still embrace him and bring him into my home." When Mahaprabhu heard these words of Srivas, he laughed and roared with great happiness and satisfaction. He says, "What are you saying, Pandit? You have that much faith in Nityananda? How is it you have understood the confidential position of my Nityananda? You are pleasing me so much, Srivas. Now I must give you a boon, that the goddess of fortune, she may go anywhere else, but she will never leave your home." So, in this way, the Lord said, even a cat and a dog will be blessed if they take residence in your home. So, in this way, the Lord tested him. So, during the time after that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I mentioned, took sannyasa and went to Puri, Nityananda stayed in Navadvip. And he would go back and forth every year with the devotees, predominantly headed by Shivananda Sain. He would go back and forth every year with them. And so when he was there, he would stay at the house of Srivasa Malini. And his activities were like a young child when he was there, when he was staying there. They mentioned that one time he was very, very much feeling compassion towards Mother Malini. And he came and observed, and he saw that she was crying very, very much. So he went to her, he said, "Mata," he said, "please, you can tell me, what is the difficulty? Why are you so concerned?" He said, "Well, I was doing the puja here, and I had the ghee wicks in this small copper thing. And what happened was that this crow came and took the copper dish and went up into the tree." And Nityananda looked up, and he saw there, sitting on the branch, was a large crow with the copper tray in his mouth and the ghee wicks there. No, Lord Nityananda is non-different than the super soul in the heart of every living entity. He looked at the crow, and he said, "Crow, bring back the copper dish to Mata." And the crow immediately flew down and placed the copper dish there. So, in this way, Srivas continued all of these different activities and exchanges with both Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and with Nityananda Prabhu. There was one other story prior to Sri Chaitanya leaving Navadvip, and that was with Srivas had one servant named Duki. Now this is a very interesting story because let me see if I can get this. Let me just Yes. Duki is the one that would bring the water in for the kirtan arrangement. And so, when she was bringing the water one day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped and he said to Srivas, "What is her name?" He said, "Oh, her name is Duki." "Oh, Duki? Duki means unhappy. Why is she so unhappy?" He said, "She is unhappy. She has lost all of her family members. There is no one. We have given her shelter in that way." He said, "Duki?" He said, "But she is serving a devotee. She should not be Duki. She should be Sukhi. Instead of being unhappy, she should be very, very happy." So he said, "She is Sukhi. She is very blissful in her service, always very satisfied. So from this day forward, she should be called Sukhi." So there was this very wonderful exchange like that. So in this way, Srivasa Thakura, as we see, is a very integral part in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Navadvip Lila. Now I mentioned at the beginning when we started that I would speak about the 9 points of qualification of Srivasa Thakura. And I'm going to read these points. The first point is that Srivasa Thakura is the manifestation of Jiva Tattva, the marginal potency of the Lord. As we mentioned, he's Narada Muni. So, marginal potency means can go either way. Not material, but not spiritual, but have the ability to take either. And, of course, as Jiva Tattva, being that marginal potency, he always takes a spiritual energy. The second, truth about Srivasa is that he represents a Suddha Bhakta, the unalloyed devotee, as we just heard from this pastime of his devotion to Nityananda and his dedication to Sri Chaitanya. This is an example of his unalloyed devotion. The third truth of Srivasa Thakura is that he is the perfect Brahmin, the perfect Vaishnava, and the foremost devotee of the Lord. As one of the members of the Panchatattva, he is the topmost devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One thing many people may not be aware of, number 4, is that he's an accomplished kirtan leader. If you look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when it describes the different pastimes of the Rathayatra kirtans, it mentions how he was leading one of the kirtans. Excuse me. Thank you. So this is the fourth one, is that he's a prominent kirtan leader, one of the leaders in the 7 kirtan parties in Rathayatra. The fifth one is that the Mahaprakash pastimes took place within his home. Now these, of course, are the pastimes during the evening kirtans of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's early years, when he manifested himself as his universal form, as his 4-armed form, as his 2-armed form carrying the flute, as Varaha, all these different pastimes according to the desire of the devotee, fulfilling each of the devotee's desires to see him in whatever form they desire to see him like this. This is called the Mahaprakash pastime, and this Leela took place in Srivasa's home. The sixth thing is that his home was the actual headquarters for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. We mentioned this earlier, that this was the place when he came back from Gaya that he headquartered himself from. So this is another of the glorious truths of Srivasa Thakura. The seventh one is that Srivasa Thakura dedicated all of his energy to the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was exhibited by the conversation we read earlier, when Sri Chaitanya was quizzing Srivasa, you don't do any business, you don't work. No, I simply have faith in you in the holy name. So all of his energy was dedicated to the Sankirtan movement. The eighth thing was that Srivasa surrendered his mind, body, family, and friends, and all of his possessions in the service of Lord Gauranga. That there was nothing he kept only for himself. Everything he had was used in the service of Lord Gauranga. And the ninth truth about the qualification of Srivasa Thakura is that he took very, very careful attention to maintaining his family members. But why did he take that attention to maintaining his family members? Not because they were his family members, but because he saw them as devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it was his duty, his responsibility to maintain the devotees of the Lord. So in this way, Srivasa is shown by these 9 points to be the most qualified personality in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, we're going to finish there for this evening. It's just about 9 o'clock. Just a little bit under an hour we've been speaking. See if we have any other notes here. No, that's everything. Want to ask if there are any devotees out there, if they've got any particular questions. I see our usual crowd, a couple of new names, Darren and Vijay. Nice to have you both with us. Mauricio, I see you there. Always good to have you. Bluegrass was here for a bit. We haven't had Bluegrass in for a couple of weeks. And Scott from Quebec, our friend in Canada there. So, Hare Krishna. If anyone has any questions, wants to bring anything up about the subject of Srivasa, or if you have any other questions that we can attempt to answer, we'll be happy to. One of the benefits of these evening programs we have of discussing the associates of the Lord is it helps us gain a greater insight into Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's relationship with different types of devotees. Rupa Goswami gives this explanation that one has to know how to associate with different devotees. That one should take those that are his senior and respectfully serve them and hear from them. And that one should take those that are his equals and he should develop very close friendships with them and reveal the mind and accept them revealing the mind. And then one should, in relationship to juniors, one should give them shelter and guidance and advice like that. And then in relationship to those personalities that are not so devotionally minded, that maybe are devotees but have bad habits, whatever, they should be respected from a distance. So these are the instructions that Rupa Goswami gives, and these are based upon understanding the relationships we see in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his own devotees. So looks like a quiet night in the chat room there. And with that, I think we'll finish this evening. So we thank you once again, and we're happy you've joined us for another night in the lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas. Hare Krishna.